Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show. You do anything good this week?
It's been a busy week, but you know what I spent a chunk of time doing?
I wish you would tell me.
While I worked, I spent time listening to John Carpenter's new album. Because, you know, I've been so busy, I haven't had a chance to see a single movie. So I just sit there.
Because you're producing. You're just busy producing all the time.
Yeah, I got 2 TV shows we're doing back to back right now, and it's making me pull a few strands of hair out, but Yeah, while I'm trying not to pull any more hair out, I've been listening to some of John Carpenter's new album.
You like it, don't you?
You know, I do actually. It's called Lost Themes, and he released it just a few weeks ago. And yeah, it's funny because even though he just released it very recently, it sounds like music from his movies back in the 80s. It really sounds like 80s music. But I have a great time listening to it. It actually, in a weird way, actually sounds like better 80s scores than some of his 80s scores were.
Though the bar was fairly low.
The bar was pretty low. But yeah, so, it's fun. I've been just enjoying it and just feeling like I'm kind of getting some good old John Carpenter flashbacks.
That's good. I'm glad you feel so good. I tried listening to it. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. It was too much Escape from New York for me.
Well, it's not that bad. It's not that bad, but it definitely does have very John Carpenter, just a vibe, that whole musical feel that he does so often when he's composing his stuff.
Yeah.
Works for some people, I guess.
I think we should probably just tell the people where we're from.
Yeah, where are we from?
Hey, everybody, this is The Next Reel. I'm Pete Wright. That there is Andy Nelson.
Hiya!
And we spoil movies tonight on the show, number 5 in our series on the works of Sir Alec Guinness with the Neil Simon murder mystery send-up, Murder by Death. Before we get into that, though, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And if you're so Insta-climbed, you might want to join us at Instagram.com/thenextreel and play the Instagram hashtag Pony Prize, hashtag Standy versus the People, hashtag Guess the Movie Challenge. Andy, how did we do against the murderous multitudes this week?
This was a kind of a fun week with a bit of a flashback to 1935's Captain Blood, directed by Michael Curtiz, with Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland. Some fun images that popped up in here that led to some interesting guesses and some cryptic ones. The Tujbut.
That I feel like we need some explanation on that from Mr. Tilquist. Did you ever get an answer?
He actually said it was Marty Feldman's way of saying turban. He did finally respond after a while.
That I was caused quite a stir up in our back channel. What the? Hey, who's he talking about?
Yes, we couldn't quite figure out what it was, but. Despite that, three images in, Alexander C. Curran came from the pack and nailed it with Captain Blood. So Alexander C. Curran is entered to win the Pony Prize.
Outstanding. Andy, it's time. Let's do the trailers.
I don't know if I'm going to say I'm excited. I think I'm excited for my trailer. I'm excited for what my trailer represents. My trailer is actually, it's an independent film called Kung Fury that looks just absurd in every way, shape, and form. It's a send-up of like 80s cop movies. It's kind of almost a weird homage, like to the cop movies, to kung fu movies, and it's just ridiculous in every way. It's a film that looks virtually shot entirely on green screen, and then they build these actors into these crazy landscapes where this former cop, now kung fu master, has like his supercar that he can fly through the air and stop the bad guys, and then he has to go back in time with just ridiculously awesome 80s time travel.
This was fantastic. This was what I wanted. Like when I was those Saturday mornings, I was pumping quarters into Double Dragon, and this is what I was playing in my head.
Right, exactly. And he has to go back in time to stop Kung Führer, Adolf Hitler, who also apparently is a kung fu master.
Hey, you got a permit for those guns?
I've got your permit right here. He's a kung fu renegade cop.
I don't want to hear it, Kung Fury. I've just been at City Hall. You just destroyed an entire city block, for Christ's sake.
I quit.
Now he must defeat the most evil kung fu master in the world, Adolf Hitler, a.k.a. Kung Fuhrer.
Hitler. He's the worst criminal of all time. I need to kill him.
It just looks completely absurd in every way. They actually they looked to raise $200,000 on Kickstarter, and they ended up raising more than 3 times that, and because people want their 80s kung fu, let me tell you. So because of that, they ended up, they're taking a little longer to get the movie made, I guess. They're actually looking to release it sometime in 2015 now. They've had a chance to add a couple extra scenes. Looking on their Kickstarter page, there's a shot of somebody, of the Kung Fury guy with a cop dinosaur, like a person with a dinosaur's head and hands. Not quite sure what to make of that. There's some interesting artwork, like Hacker Man, his computer friend, who apparently hacks himself into a giant computer robot that fires lethal computer code.
What I love so much about that is the hacking is here. I'm going to hack you into this computer. You stand on this old Apple II console.
Yeah.
Just stand on it, and I will hack you back in time.
Surf on it through time.
It's the best.
Oh, it looks so absurd. But anyway, they have that extra money. They're adding a few extra scenes. They're putting in extra money to their effects, and they're looking to release it sometime in 2015. I have no idea when, but I'm going to be tracking it now because I want to see it.
Do you remember the first Double Dragon movie?
I think I skipped that one. I don't think I ever liked Double Dragon movies.
No, they were terrible. Man, I can't wait for your movie. I am very excited to see it, and it satisfies everything in my inner 12-year-old.
Yes, exactly. That's what I think. That's the reason they got it funded.
Yeah. Boy, my trailer is just the other end of the world from yours. So I mentioned last week that what a fan I was of Into the Woods. I love that we have a bona fide musical in theaters right now, and I doubly love that as of next week we're going to have 2 the last 5 years contemporary musical coming from the musical film from director Richard Lagravanese and writer Jason Robert Brown. Stars Jeremy Jordan, and unsurprisingly given her musical cred right now, Anna Kendrick. She is just super charming. I think contemporary musicals are really hard on screen. Even as a fan, I still think it's weird to see a couple just burst out in song on a bright New York day. Joss Whedon can pull it off. Otherwise, it's weird. But here, I started to get a little bit of that Buffy Once More with Feeling vibe. It's just snippets and hints, but enough to get me a bit excited to keep my musical buzz on for a few more weeks. I'm looking forward to this one. Last 5 years opens February 13th, 2015.
Pretty good, right?
I've never been more attracted to you.
I could wander Paris after dark, take a carriage ride through Central Park, but it wouldn't be as nice as a summer in Ohio, where I'm sharing a room with a former stripper and her snake.
I love you.
Wayne.
You think it's too much singing, don't you?
Boy, they sure don't stop, do they? I think there was one line of dialogue in the trailer, otherwise a lot of singing. But, Anna Kendrick, I will say I've been impressed with her body of work, and, going into the Pitch Perfect movie and its sequel, makes for 3 actually musical movies that she's going to be in the coming months. Along with Into the Woods, which I still haven't seen, and now this. She's pretty fantastic. I think that she's a great actress, and certainly is pulling some cred. Even though this looks like an awful lot of singing.
It's that I'm with you. It's an awful lot of singing. It's an awful lot of street singing.
Yeah.
And that's you are picking out what I think can be a little bit weird by that, but there are hints that they move past the awkwardness and actually pull it off. So I really am looking forward to it. And I love the music. If you haven't heard the score, pull it up on Spotify or Beats or something and check it out, because the music is, if you're a fan of musicals, the music is really wonderful. So it's a musical about breakups. So take the most difficult time in your emotional life and sing about it a lot.
And
sing a lot about it. Oh, Andy,
Yes.
you're good, Andy. You're not my kind of podcaster, but you're smart and you smell good. You're not a pansy, I know that, but what the hell are you?
I don't feel good about this. There's a number on the wall for all of us, Angel.
Neil Simon's Murder by Death. Meanwhile, a short, sinister man who looks exactly like Truman Capote is preparing a diabolical weekend for the greatest detectives in the world. As we join them, our 5 clue persons and their faithful companions are trapped in a mysterious old mansion where a fiendishly ingenious crime is about to take place.
The victim is here at this very table at this very moment. And so, too, ladies and gentlemen, is the murderer.
It's the most stupid theory I ever heard.
One of us is a mad killer, and not to be trusted.
Murder by Death. Murder by Death, Andy. 1976 from director Robert Moore, based on the screenplay by the fantastic Neil Simon. How did it hit you?
This was the first time for me. And I have to say,
I'm super curious about this. I really am, because I don't know. After I watched it, I started getting nervous.
Oh, really?
I really did. I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about you watching this movie, and I'm thinking to myself, so this is a comedy, right? It's a spoof, right? These actors play send-ups of famous fictional sleuths as interpreted by 1976 Neil Simon. And it trucks in what has to be one of the highest counts of stereotypical movie tropes on screen in any one film of the decade. And so I watched, I thought, does this movie hold up? If you're not in it, if you didn't fall in love with it when it was current.
The first thing that struck me is how much this is exactly like Clue, which we mentioned last week is kind of a guilty pleasure of both of ours.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know that at all. So watching this, I was a little surprised that Clue was so much just another version of this story. And I would say probably one that I still like more than this version. And, I was thinking about that. Is it because it's dated? Is it because this one was made 10 years earlier? Or is it just because that one, some of the comedy worked better for my sensibilities? Is it because there definitely is the difficulty, I suppose, with the way Peter Sellers plays Sidney, his character. But at the same time, it's like when you reflect on the character that he's spoofing, Charlie Chan was essentially the same thing. It was no different.
Charlie Chan was exactly the same thing. Charlie Chan was a Chinese detective played in film by a Swede.
Played by a lot of non-Oriental people. Yeah, and so it's funny to look at that, but at the same time, it's just I don't know. I found it kind of funny to watch, but kind of a little painful too. So it's that, I think, if anything, dates this film and makes it probably just not as palatable to modern audiences. But I still found it very fun. I think I did really enjoy it quite a bit. I feel like I wanted it to be a little more clever than it was, but at the same time, I felt that so much of the writing was just so good. And the comedy, I think there was some great comedy lines that kept catching me off guard, and I just kept finding myself laughing out loud.
That is relief. that you said you actually got some audible laughs. I did too. This film sort of sneaks into our series as Sir Alec Guinness does appear as the blind butler among other characters.
Jamesir Bensonmum.
James Bensonmum. He does make the first half of the film, I think, particularly amusing in his work there. I think he's a real light. But like you said, I don't think Murder by Death is a timeless film. In so much as it's a love letter to kind of Earl Biggers, Dashiell Hammett, and Agatha Christie. It's a film that carries a lot of baggage of the era. The jokes are quaint. I also found myself laughing out loud, uncomfortably in many cases. But most of the jokes are sort of inside jokes. Like if you didn't kind of grow up with it or know know the tropes or know the characters that they're sending up, I just don't think this holds up over time. And I'm with you. I think Clue, in as much as it is sort of sterilized from Murder by Death, is a more palatable guilty pleasure. It's less offensive in many regards. I think when I was a kid, since I did grow up with this film, I love it. I have a great affinity for what Simon was trying to do with the send-ups, and I'm a great lover of the the source material, and I think the casting is really just perfect. And when I watched it as a kid, I really got it. Like I got the jokes as a teenager. I thought this is really funny, and I got more of the jokes as I grew a little older. And now I get the intention of the jokes, and they have just. They just carry too much weight, and so a lot of the racial, gender, there's a number of there are a number of issues around sexuality that are that are a little bit troublesome to watch at this point. It's not played very delicately, and I think it would have been really funny to an audience in 1976, and it's just not that funny now. And I agree with you on the cleverness scale. My memory of this film is that it is vastly more clever than it is now.
Yeah.
I just expected more.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's always tricky making a film like this because it's one of those stories that at the time holds a lot more originality. And then as time progresses, people pull things from it, and it ends up becoming something that's a little played out because it kind of I don't want to say set the trend, but it certainly had done things that now are more familiar. And so, especially in the world of mysteries, it's one of the dangers of working in that field is like once the mystery is out there, people are maybe less inclined to go back and revisit the story or the film because they already know the whodunit of the whole thing. And this one is certainly the case, even though it is a send-up of that whole notion of how those Agatha Christie, Dashiell Hammett, Earl Biggers stories typically unfolded and ended. More specifically, it still does kind of follow that pattern. So by the time you get to the ending, you're like, oh, okay, well that was cute, and then you're like, okay. Yeah. Well, and part of his intention, I think Neil Simon's intention was to send up how frustrating it is, or it was from his perspective, to watch these, or read or watch these detective stories that just failed to actually be mysteries, right? They would, when you deconstruct them, you realize that the detective is suddenly getting all these fantastic clues right at the end of the book that the reader could never have put together on their own. It's just sloppy writing, sloppy construction, and I think that was a major frustration that led to this film. And I think that for me is one of the failings of the film, because by the time you get to the end, it really, I mean, as he's sending up all of these, like there are so many different potential solutions. That by the end, it's just becomes a big mess. It's not clever. It's not particularly funny, and it's just over. You get to the end, and you see that all of the different possible answers, like you said, are revealed. And then there's this final twist at the end as well. And you look back on it, and this is not a film that works when you try to piece it back together from the back. Like, you couldn't watch it a second time and it would all make sense. There's no logic to it. It purely is designed as nothing but a send-up. And I think that's what takes some of the joy away from it, is the fact that it can't work as a story in and of itself. It only works as a send-up.
Yeah, that's it. And the challenge there is that by the time you get the final reveal, none of the potential solutions are even remotely satisfying. Right? We get to the end of this film, the end of this hour and a half with these characters, and there is no reward for our attention. It was a little bit. It was funny along the way, but there was no reward, I think.
Exactly.
So that's a problem that I had with it. What did you think of our hero, Sir Alec Guinness, the hero of our series, and his role as the blind butler?
Well, I will say he did it really well. I did have a blast watching him. He does the blind butler really well. I was a little. The first thing that we see, I think, was one of the most awful moments that he had in any of the films that we had to watch, and that's him stamping the letters. I was just like, oh, we're going to do this, and we're going to see him doing every single one of these. And, of course, he's not actually stamping the letters. He's stamping the desk. And it was, I was like, oh, that was pretty terrible. But from that point on, once he's actually interacting with everybody, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I thought he was he played it really well. And I think that my favorite moments for him actually were toward the end with the reveal, and because we think he's dead, and then of course he's not. And or is he? It's hard to say whether he was really dead or not. I really can't
whether
say.
He really existed. Like, was he ever even in the film?
Right. But you get to his last set of performances. And I think that really, for me, harkened back to Kind Hearts and Coronets, which was great to see as the back end of this series. And now we've kind of bookended it with these two films, where here he is playing this blind butler for the majority of the film. And then all of a sudden, as all these different solutions are revealed by our detectives, he ends up getting to go through very small but very well done transformations within just the way that he's portraying himself. And I thought that was just brilliant. I had so much fun watching him, particularly when he becomes the daughter, and just goes through the motions of being these different people as the reveals are made. And that, for me, made like everything worth it.
I agree with you. I think those changes were so subtle, really elegant performance in the final just 5 minutes. And you're right, when he switches to the daughter and he does that move with his arm across his hat, and his hat, which was this kind of broad-rimmed fedora, suddenly gets, because of the way he's holding it, the brim in the front goes up and down on the side as he's holding it to cover the side of his head. It goes from masculine to feminine so fast, but it's not a cut. Like, it's not a trick. It's just performance, and it was really cool. Very subtle. So I agree with you. I thought he was terrific. The other thing I think of note is his work just as a physical actor. I think it is difficult, having never either played a blind person or been blind, to... Does that sound weird? Does that come off as weird? Both of those things are true.
They are true. It's good to know, though. And knowing that Alec Guinness is not or was not blind in this film, I thought his portrayal of the physicality of the blind butler, having to, just the way he feels around, uses the cane, feels around, but then has to serve the soup, and the conversations that he has with the deaf-mute cook, I thought were just really great moments for him in the film. I really enjoyed watching him play that role.
And knowing, obviously, at the end that, in fact, he's not blind, and he was pretending to be blind as he was blind in the film, makes it, I guess, slightly more rewarding, or less. I'll never know.
Yes.
So, the setup, we haven't really done the setup of the film. The story takes place in this, isolated country home that is owned and operated by eccentric godzillionaire Lionel Twain. And his address is at 22 Twain. And the train
I only just got that.
Really? Just now?
When you said it. I don't know why. Because in my head, I was always 22. I don't know. I never.
Seriously?
That's pretty funny.
You got the Lionel Twain bit, though, right? Lionel Trains?
No, I didn't even get that.
Oh, Andy.
Apparently I wasn't thinking about trains when I watched the movie.
Talk about hanging a hat on it. The 22 Twain bit was when Sidney and his adopted Japanese son, he said, "Oh, Pop, I found the address, 22 Twain." And Sidney says, "Stop. Like, don't say anymore. Let the joke sit. People will miss it if you keep talking. Shut up." Even that was not good enough for you.
No, that just, yeah.
Well, so the setup here is that Lionel Twain, played by Truman Capote, and his blind butler, Jamesir Bensonmum, and their deaf-mute cook, Yetta, Lionel has set up this event where he invites 5 of the greatest famous detectives to his house, to his estate, to solve a murder that will take place at the stroke of midnight. It's kind of it's a locked room mystery. They lock all the doors. Everybody has to stay at this place and solve this crime. And so we have Inspector Sidney Wang, as we've said, is based on Earl Dare Bigger's Chinese detective Charlie Chan. And that is played by Peter Sellers. And he brings his adopted Japanese son. Dick and Dora Charleston, played by David Niven and Maggie Smith, are modeled after Dashiell Hammett's Nick and Nora Charles from The Thin Man. We have Milo Perrier, played by James Coco, is Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot. And I love his butler, chauffeur, Marcel Cassette, played by young James Cromwell. This is his very first feature film role.
Yeah, that was weird.
And Sam Diamond is played by Peter Falk, and he's parodying, if that's the thing. Can you parodying? Yes. He's parodying another Dashiell Hammett, Sam Spade from The Maltese Falcon, and he brings Tess Skeffington, played by Eileen Brennan, who is, I think, the only actress to actually move on from this to go to Clue.
Yes.
And Jessica Marbles, finally, played by Elsa Lanchester, parodies Agatha Christie's Miss Marple, and she shows up with her nurse, who she's actually caring for her ancient nurse, Miss Withers. Okay, so that's essentially, that boils it down. That's me summarizing the cast from Wikipedia, because it's written very nicely there.
Nicely organized.
It is nicely organized there. So, so we move on. Let's go to Lionel Twain, Truman Capote.
How do I look so young? Quite simple. A complete vegetable diet, 12 hours sleep a night, and lots of makeup.
Yeah, that was strange to see him turn up. I guess this was, I believe, the first film that he had actually been in.
Yeah, I believe so. What did he do? He didn't do much after, right?
I don't think so.
He went back to, where was he from? Kansas?
I don't think he was from Kansas. He was in New York.
No. He was Louisiana. He was born in Louisiana, not Kansas. But he spent a lot of time in Kansas. I'm sure it was Kansas, because that's where he wrote In Cold Blood.
Right.
He lived there for a long, like 6 years or something. And yeah. So he, wow, you know what his name was?
Yeah.
Truman Streckfus Persons.
Streckfus. There's a middle name you don't hear too often anymore.
Wow.
I know.
Classic. So he obviously wrote a lot of things. He has 5 writing credits. He was in Annie Hall. Five acting credits. He was in Annie Hall after this.
Right, which is, I think, the only other film that he had been in.
That's the only other film, right? TV, movie.
The other stuff is all narration.
Yeah, it's all narration. Look at that. Huh. Voice as Mr. Capote.
I mean, he was really known more for writing projects. I mean, that's what he was. He was a writer, and he had written, obviously, In Cold Blood and the adaptation of that, Breakfast at Tiffany's, The Innocents. He had, definitely done quite a bit of stuff, and was, kind of a notorious writer. Everybody kind of knew who he was. And it was just, I was not expecting it. In fact, I don't know, I watched the trailer first, and I didn't think it was him. And then it said Truman Capote. I was like, wow, that surprised me.
So he was, what did you think of his actual delivery as the eccentric Godzillionaire? Did you believe him?
Yeah, I mean, he certainly is eccentric. He's just one of those wacky guys. He's got just strange delivery. I liked the way that he played the character. I thought he felt eccentric. Obviously a lot of that is in the writing, the way that he disappears and reappears with the lights turning on and off. There's the big psychedelic drug-induced thing that goes on when he first appears, and nobody knows what's going on. Just the strangeness of the setup of this house, that where rooms move around, and he like that moment when he's sitting in the chair and the doors open and his chair just goes flying backward for him to disappear out of the room. It's just like weird things like that all seemed to end up making sense because Truman Capote was in the movie.
Yeah, I agree with that. That would not have worked if, for example, Lionel Twain was played by David Niven.
No,
I don't think he could have pulled that off. I agree with you, and the house is something that we should talk about. The sort of, well, I guess it's the effects portion of our show. I have a hard time kind of figuring out how to talk about it because there were obviously so few effects. It starts by hinting at this, the fact that this house is a little bit strange. When 3 of the detectives leave the room, they go to the kitchen because they hear gunshots, and when they come back, they're in an empty dining room. All of the people who were in the dining room are now gone. Dining room is perfectly clean, and then the cow on the wall begins to speak, and it's Truman Capote, whose head is stuck inside a moose, right? The moose on the wall. And he tells them, go outside, count to 10, and try the door again. So they do, and when they come back, they open the door again, and suddenly everything's back. And that is when they start discovering that everything in this house there are 2 of. And so there are 2 bathrooms, there are 2 dining rooms, there's 2 of everything. And when they close the door, all the rooms shift. And
it's like Cube.
It's just like Cube. And I find that charming. And then they start pulling these really absurdist transformations, right? We meet Yetta, for example. And it turns out Yetta isn't a person. Yetta was a mannequin. Yetta, who we've seen wandering around and not speaking, but she was there. She was a real person. And suddenly they find her in a box, and she's now made of plastic. And so obviously we know by the end of the film that Yetta was presumably there all along. But the fact that these hard-boiled detectives, try to play off that they believe that Yetta, the walking and talking cook, was now plastic mannequin in a box, I found that a bridge too far.
That was definitely a bridge too far. And same with the disappearing, reappearing body of the and clothes of the butler, which I actually thought was very funny
the first time.
But the first time, but it was just, it's absurdist, and that's where the film ended up taking its turn down this absurdist road, where all of a sudden I wasn't. I was finding myself enjoying it less because the absurdist nature of some of this stuff. Just there's no logic to it, and I don't know. Maybe in the world of Clue, I like the absurdist elements more because it just kind of seems to all fit together more as a more of a cohesive whole.
But I don't remember it being so staged in Clue. I remember it being much more of a character kind of weirdness.
Well, yeah, and I don't remember anything where it's like they walk into a room, they find the dead butler. They leave, they come back. They find that the butler's gone, but his clothes are still there. They leave and they come back. They find that the butler's naked body is now there, but his clothing is gone. That was...
And then
really...
they leave, and then Monsieur Perrier leaves the room, and when he comes back, he is now in the butler's clothes.
Yeah, right.
But they never explain that. They just say, don't... He says, don't ask. It's too embarrassing, I think he says. Anyhow, it's just too much. Don't ask. They never explain how he ended up in the clothes, and that was never an issue for anybody. Any one of these detectives who all come at detecting, at solving crimes from a different sort of angle. You have to believe that one of them would have thought twice about letting that particular event go.
Yes.
It just wasn't. It wasn't funny enough to not make me think twice about the mystery itself. I did ultimately want there to be a mystery to solve.
Well, that's the thing. The thing you've got the thing that, if I don't want to say irks me, but it's something that I wish that they could have done better. There's a lot of great comedy playing with these 5 detectives and their partners, or whatever you want to call them, the significant others, etc., that they brought along. I enjoy so much of that, but what I would love to have seen is to actually have these guys really have something to do. There's nothing that they really have to do. They run in and out of the room a few times, then they go to their own suites, and they each escape a near death, and then they all kind of come up with their own solution. It was very little going on.
Structurally, it felt a little out of balance in that regard, too. I think that's a really good point. We spend so much of the film in the dining room, right? We spend a good portion of the film in the introductory, segment. When we get all the couples are coming into the house, there's a lot of that. But then we spend so much time in the dining room, wandering around between the dining room and the bathroom and the kitchen, that by the time we get to the bedrooms, we have so little time for these characters to actually try to solve a crime that it almost feels like they just sort of wash their hands of the story, right? We're just sort of done. And then the movie ends, and it's so short, so it seems so top-heavy, like really heavy in the front of, this single set, a lot of people in the same room, that by the time we get any sort of a break, any sort of room to breathe and kind of experience these characters on their own, it's over.
That was really the thing for me. I kept looking at the time because I looked at it ahead of time just to see how long it was. And we were still waiting to get introduced to all the characters, or not get introduced, but have them all arrive and kind of settle into this mansion and into this mystery story halfway through the film. And I was like, man, this is really a long setup. And then I kept watching, and they were all in their rooms. And that's when they were having these death moments, each of them set up with some moment where they had to, escape some form of potential death. And the movie had like less than 10 minutes. I'm like, how is this movie going to end in less than 10 minutes if we're only at this point where there's nobody has even come close to getting anything solved yet?
Well, it's going to end cheaply is the way it's going to end.
Is exactly what it did. It ended very cheaply. And while I did enjoy, like we already discussed, Alec Guinness and how brilliant he is through that whole last scene, and it's, I see how Neil Simon is playing with the tropes of these types of mystery stories. It did feel very rushed.
So to this point, Andy, we don't meet Truman Capote. We don't meet our benefactor until 43 minutes into the film.
Yeah, that's like the midpoint of the film.
That is just death to the balance of the story, because we want, I think this film would have played so much better had we gotten them into the house and gotten them into dinner to do the setup within the first 10 minutes, right? Let us let us see why they're there, and then let them do their sort of bickering or start the film. Give them a chance to be detectives.
Meeting the benefactor, that whole setup of this mystery should really be the inciting incident of the film. That should be the thing that happens partway through that first act that kind of pushes us into the rest of the story. Having it be the midpoint of the story just really does feel quite tedious in today's modern storytelling age.
I feel like we might be being a little bit unnecessarily hard on it, just because the intention of the film.
Yeah, I mean, it is as I just said. They said light and insubstantial. It is. It's not meant to be a whole lot. I mean, yes, there is that send-up element that Neil Simon was doing, but it was all for fun. And if you look at it that way, yes, it is fun. I did enjoy it. I mean, we both still walked away saying we laughed a lot. It is something that you can still watch and enjoy. It's just not anything that I feel I need to rush out and watch again.
Let's just buzz through the main characters, though. I feel like we would be doing a disservice to the film by not at least reflecting a bit on Peter Sellers.
One moment, please. Very interesting theory, Mr. Charleston. But you overlook one very important point.
And that is?
He's stupid. He's the most stupid theory I ever heard.
Yeah. Very interesting. I mean, like we already said, Charlie Chan is a character who is played by a number of different characters. I didn't know this, but Charlie Chan, the character, was initially portrayed by East Asian actors, and the films just had very little success. And so then they changed it to this Swedish actor, Warner Oland, who started in Charlie Chan Carries On. The film became very popular. He did 15 more films. He died. Somebody else did it, made 22 more. Then somebody else did it. There ended up being over 4 Charlie Chan films made, which is crazy. And a lot of people, even just with Charlie Chan, there's people who are pro Charlie Chan, saying that he is portraying an intelligent, heroic, benevolent, honorable Asian character. And then there are all the people who say it's, showing these Oriental people just very stereotypical. They can't speak fluent English. They are stuck in their tradition. They're subservient to all of that. And yes, I mean, Peter Sellers is a master at this sort of performance, but I don't know. It did feel a little uncomfortable to me.
What was it that was uncomfortable?
Well, just the nature of it. I guess it's only uncomfortable looking at it through today's eyes. Back then, when he was doing this, it may not have been uncomfortable. So, I mean, I can put myself into it and watch it from that perspective, knowing that 40 years ago, nearly, it's not something that people would have really been bothered by too much. Now, I'm just like, if I want to watch an Asian character that just feels so stereotypical on screen, I'd rather see an Asian person trying it.
Yeah, I guess I agree with that. I feel like they were, obviously, and again, if you know what they're sending up, if you know what they're lampooning, it makes it a little bit easier to stomach. I mean, the original films were ripe with the grammatical issues, and I think they made a big play on that, as Twain says over and over. How can one of the world's greatest detectives not know how to say his pronouns? They make a big deal about the things that they wanted to make a big deal about.
Yeah.
I just didn't find those things all that funny. I did find myself laughing often at his use of idiom. I think he has some. It's a pretty well scripted part, like a comedic part. He's funny, he's dry, he comes in all the right places. His lines come in all the right places in these big group scenes. And so I enjoyed seeing him. I particularly enjoyed seeing him, maybe ironically, I enjoyed seeing him in the makeup. Like I felt like he, like Alec Guinness, is a wonderful comedic character actor, and he's just use of his body and the use of his face and doing the teeth work like we were sort of talking about last week. I think it was really nice to watch him in that role. I found myself just getting a sense of joy in that role and his relationship with his adopted Japanese son.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah.
How about Sam Spade? Not Sam Spade.
Peter Falk?
Sam Diamond.
Sam Diamond, yeah.
Because I gave you a $50 bill and the gas was only $5. Maybe you come back. Maybe you wouldn't. I couldn't take that chance, Angel.
Don't you trust me, Sam?
Trust you? The last time that I trusted a dame was in Paris in 1940. She said she was going out to get a bottle of wine. 2 hours later, the Germans marched into France.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sam.
Sorry, nothing. Give me my change.
Peter Falk is he's so fun to watch. I mean, he's great. And this was actually a really fun part. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I mean, it goes down some roads that I'm like, a little uncomfortable. But I did kind of enjoy the whole, the twist that they had with the character, both as initially being this, that the Sam Spade type of character, all of a sudden becoming this guy who apparently is hanging out in gay bars all the time, to all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, now he's just an actor pretending to be this detective, back to, oh, he is this detective. I thought he played that well. I really liked the moment when he reveals that he is just this actor. His personality changed, and like Alec Guinness, he actually took a nice twist to that character that I thought worked really well and was pretty believable.
I did too. I enjoyed watching him. He's, Peter Falk has become that character. He's it doesn't really matter what era you see Peter Falk, he's always pretty much Columbo. Even the Princess Bride, he's Columbo. But I also enjoyed that. Would
you say that's true in Corky Romano?
In Corky Romano, maybe should that be on my list of shame? I don't think I've ever seen it.
No, it should not be on your list of shame.
Was it that good? You liked it that much?
No.
I need to write a blog post.
That was that Chris Kattan Saturday Night Live.
Hang on, I'm sending a quick tweet. Andy says he loves Chris Kattan movies. I really enjoy Peter Falk in this film. I enjoy his character. I find I think he has some genuinely funny lines. I think the closeted homosexual in the gay bar thing, that's another one that's a little bit of a bridge too far for me. I just, it's because, again, of the time. It's the baggage of the 70s. But I found that's where it started taking his character into angry humor. And it wasn't that charming detective humor anymore.
Right. I agree.
Yeah, I loved his relationship with Eileen Brennan, however. I thought she was terrific.
Yeah, she's always great. I just love Eileen Brennan. Yeah. And it was, that was a real treat seeing her in this, knowing that she ends up in Clue.
Yeah.
10 years later.
Yeah. David Niven, Maggie Smith.
What a pair. They work so well together, and he is just the perfect sort of person to deliver the lines, both of them really, to deliver kind of that Nick and Nora Charles type of lines.
Not many people come to the manor these days. It's nice to hear guests again.
Thank you. You are?
Bensonmum.
Thank you, Benson.
No. Bensonmum. My name is Bensonmum.
Bensonmum?
Yes, sir. James Bensonmum.
James, sir?
Yes, sir.
James Bensonmum?
Yes, sir.
Howard.
My father's name, sir.
What was your father's name?
Howard. Howard Bensonmum.
Your father was Howard Bensonmum?
Leave it be, dear. I've had enough.
Ah, here we are. The late Mrs. Twain's room. She died in here.
Oh, dear.
Died of what?
She murdered herself in her sleep, sir.
You mean suicide?
Oh, no. It was murder, all right. Mrs. Twain hated herself.
They did such a great job as Mr. and Mrs. Charleston. And I thought they just worked well together. Again, there's the awkward stuff going on, the bit where Lionel won't let the wives speak, and it just kind of, the things like that felt a little uncomfortable. going back to, well, so far it seems every one of these pairings has some bit of uncomfortable moments. But for the most part, these two I thought just were a perfect pair, and I had a great time with them.
Well, we started with these three pairs, which have some uncomfortable moments. I had no uncomfortable moments that I picked up off of Milo Perrier or Jessica Marbles.
I agree. Yeah, those two, there were no problems with those ones.
They were goofy, funny, sort of docile, unoffensive characters. I'm sure somebody can find a reason to be offended by them, but I did not. I thought, I thought Marcel Cassette, as we mentioned, James Cromwell was. I thought he was very funny in this, especially when he jumps out of bed to try to, as the ceiling starts to come down to crush them, he jumps out of bed, and what is he wearing? Some sort of mesh pajamas?
That was really surprising to see.
Just
that was strange.
Fantastic. And James Coco as Perrier, I thought was really funny when he begins to lament the death of his poodle.
Your sweetheart? My poodle. He was a most cruel man. Monsieur Twain would come to France every season to hunt poodles.
He was great. I always remember him from Man of La Mancha. That's just, I think that's probably the only place that I recognize him from, except maybe, I think he was in one of the Muppets movies.
Jessica Marbles and Estelle Winwood. Estelle Winwood is the ancient nurse who doesn't really speak much until the end, although the level of glee that she exudes when she says murder poo, she gets so excited that somebody's going to be killed, is really great.
Yeah, it was a weird little character. It's like I was like, that's strange, this nurse. But it was cute. I enjoyed seeing Elsa Lanchester again. We've talked about her several times now. And actually, her and David Niven fairly recently on our Bishop's Wife episode.
I'm not one to use hyperbole, ladies and gentlemen, but I'll tell you this. For the first time in my life, I had the caca scared out of me.
What do we know about Robert Moore?
This was his first film. This was the first thing that he directed, and he did not direct much. He directed is it officially a sequel, The Cheap Detective? Or is it just kind of another
sequel?
Yeah, I think it's more of a spiritual sequel that Neil Simon and Robert Moore put together. The Cheap Detective is a similar sort of story that Moore is a parody of just Bogart movies, Casablanca and Maltese Falcon. But Eileen Brennan also popped up in that, and of course Peter Falk plays kind of he plays Lou Peckinpah, the send up of Bogey.
Yeah. I haven't. But, it's been a long time since I've seen that film, and I think I've only seen it once. It was not great.
Well, I had heard of Murder by Death. I hadn't even heard of The Cheap Detective, so I guess that says everything.
Yeah.
Other than that, it doesn't look like he really did a whole heck of a lot. I mean, he had done a lot of TV, and that's where he came from, the world of TV. He directed a lot of Rhoda. Before he went into Murder by Death, and then he did some more TV stuff, a lot of stuff with Neil Simon, and then The Cheap Detective and Chapter 2, and that's his last feature credit in 1979, so really not a lot of stuff.
And he died young, right? I think he died right after that, like in the early 80s?
He was 56, he died in 84.
What else you got?
I think that's about it. Oh, Nancy Walker. She's one of those faces that you see. And I mean, her little bit of when she comes in to scream because the butler is dead, that was a funny little gag. It wasn't the best thing in the world, but it was still, it made me chuckle. She's one of those faces that I just recognize. And I was looking through her stuff and I couldn't figure out from where, but I know that I'd seen her. I think it was just from a lot of TV that she was popping in as just one of those very recognizable faces.
Did you catch Fay Wray?
Mm-mm.
Fay Wray was in this movie.
She was?
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, Fay Wray from the classic King Kong.
Right.
Among many other classics. Fay Wray played the screaming doorbell. Archive sound.
You're kidding.
I have no motive to joke with you about this.
That's funny. Was it the big scream from King Kong?
Well, there were a couple of screams, but yeah, that's my understanding. I did not go back and watch King Kong to verify, but that's Fay Wray. Let's talk a little bit about the music. Dave Grusin.
Yeah, he's a composer who he was very big at this time. He definitely had a lot of stuff going on in the 70s, 60s, 70s, into the 80s. Did the music for the Goonies.
Did the music for the Fabulous Baker Boys.
Yeah, he's definitely had some good stuff going on, and a lot of Oscar nominations, Grammys, all that sort of stuff. I like a lot of his stuff, and I thought the music in this was it was fun, it was spirited, it worked well in context of the story.
I liked it more than you liked it, I think. I really enjoy Dave Grusin's. I just enjoy his general voice in his scores. I love that sort of frenetic jazzy sound, and this really has it. It's that sort of race around the castle kind of music that it makes me think of Clue, actually, ironically, which he didn't do the score for. But it just makes me happy. So he has I think a good connection with scoring these kinds of films.
Oddly, thinking about this movie, all I can hum in my head is music from Clue. So I guess that's funny? I guess that's why I his music I think worked, but Clue stands out in my head more.
That's really funny.
Yeah. Did you know that Dave Grusin studied music at University of Colorado Boulder?
I did. He's from Littleton.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's a Colorado guy. And everything else was just, I didn't see any big performances by any members of the crew that really made me stop and say, wow, that was amazing. David M. Walsh, director of photography, John Burnett, editor. There was nothing in here that was particularly earth-shattering for me. It was all fairly run-of-the-mill.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, nothing stood out that much. If anything stood out, it was some of the comedy writing by Neil Simon that I think, this was one of his straight screenplays. This was not based on anything else that he had done. And, I thought he did a fine job. There were times where it felt really stagey. Like we said, so much of it takes place in the one room or kind of those couple rooms. It felt very much like I was just watching a stage version of something.
Right.
But, I did still come out of it enjoying it, had a fun time with it. And, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you did. I'm glad we watched this one again. I had a fun time with it, too. I think if you are interested in taking a trip back in time to see what cinematic racism and homophobia looked like in a comedy...
And sexism
40 years ago, and comedy 40 years ago, you should watch this film because you'll get a chuckle out of it. Maybe not for the reasons that were originally intended, but it will give you a chuckle. And we all need to chuckle every now and again.
Yes, we do. I couldn't find any information as far as the cost of this one, but it did pretty well for itself. It ended up domestically grossing $32.5 million, which adjusted figures to be about $133 million. So, that's I think for the type of movie it is, I think that's a pretty fair amount of money to make.
Did you find out if it made any, if it had got any awards?
I didn't find out if it got any awards. I don't believe it got.
I think Truman Capote was nominated for something. Best new act, not an Oscar, but best new actor in a film.
Is that a thing? Is that that's like one of those Golden Globes?
Yeah, it's kind of a Golden Globe-y.
Yeah.
BAFTA.
Best acting debut in a motion picture by a male, Truman Capote, for a Golden Globe.
There you go.
And Neil Simon did get nominated by the WGA for best comedy written directly for the screen. So there you go.
With that, Andrew, I think we should rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel, and you can see how our films stack up. We've got our golden ticket list now. It's 100 and some odd movies.
This is going to make 170.
170.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're going to see. I don't think I don't think it's looking great.
I don't think so.
I think will this beat 150?
All right, let's see. Murder by Death or Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yes, indeed. Murder by Death or The Sandlot? The Sandlot.
The Sandlot.
Murder by Death or Major League?
Major League.
Yeah, I think so. Murder by Death or The Blob?
Murder by Death.
Yeah, I think I would have picked Murder by Death there. Murder by Death or Yee, a 1 and a 2.
Oh, please. It's totally Murder by Death.
I would actually pick Murder by Death only because it's half the length of Yee. Even though Yee I find a much more profound and powerful film. But Murder by Death, I mean, easy chuckles. What can I say?
Easy chuckles.
Murder by Death or Bull Durham?
Well, are you waiting me out?
Yeah.
I hate you. Bull Durham.
There you go.
Nice.
Murder by Death. Oh, there you go. 155.
Wow.
155.
All because of Bull Durham, isn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Curse you.
Sorry. You know what's at 150?
What?
Escape from New York.
Are you kidding me?
Nope.
See, that's where Flickchart has failed us.
I know.
Because tell me you wouldn't outrank. You would watch Murder by Death before
Escape from New York. I totally would.
Oh man.
This is why from time to time, you want to do re-rankings, but
yes.
I don't know if I'm up.
We're certainly not up for it tonight.
No.
Where do we go from here?
Well, we are, I will say, I'm really sad that we're done with our Alec Guinness series.
Me too.
I had so much fun with this. I feel like we need to have an annual Alec Guinness series.
There are so many great movies.
Yeah. It was so fun going back and watching all of this great stuff that he has done in the past, all of which are comedies, and it's just not something that I think of when I think of Alec Guinness. So it's nice to have that part of my memory refreshed and look at him as a very funny, very talented actor.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, and I am right with you on doing a mini Alec Guinness series every year. I would love to build out that collection because there's so many of his films I haven't seen. And I think I really enjoyed most of the films that we watched this series. But this wraps up our series here for our 2015 Guinness and takes us into something new.
We're going to do our Listener's Choice episode. This is the Pony Prize winner from 2014, Cameron Ryan. She won, and her pick is the fantastic Junet Caro film, Delicatessen.
You excited about this one?
I'm very excited about this one.
Me too.
I really love that film.
Me too. I'm very much looking forward to this, and so we will talk to Cameron in just about a week, and we'll be talking about Delicatessen just after.
Looking forward to it.
Any other news for the people?
That's it.
I gotta go to bed.
All right, I got to go work on the psychedelic lighting in my room, and then I got to rig my chair so it pulls me out of the room really fast. And I'm building this big contraption that's actually going to switch rooms in my house. Although I'm going to decorate the rooms so they look identical. And then I finally found a moose head that I'm going to mount on the wall, and I'm going to hollow it out so that I can climb up into it and I can gouge through it and look at people. And then, with all the pictures in that.
Mr. Contrarian says Murder by Death is humorless and stale. This is a tremendous cast who are utterly wasted, misdirected, and edited to come across at the most bland cliches of their entire careers. I suspect that an honest love for Agatha Christie novels, the company of other fun and inspiring actors, and a fat paycheck convinced them all to accept this project in spite of their better judgment. Somehow, every drop of charisma was drained from Peter Sellers and Peter Falk. The look in their eyes suggests they knew they had made a tremendous mistake on the very first day of shooting. Somebody's rich daddy wrote a huge check and went on a cruise around the world before reading the script. I kind of lost my meter at the end, but somebody's rich daddy makes me smile.
That is funny.
I need that to be my ringtone. Somebody's rich daddy makes me smile. That's horrible. Stop it.
That is funny.
You bring out the worst in me.
Well, mine is also 1 star.
Oh.
By Speechless.
Doubling down on the 1 stars.
Yeah, that's right. Speechless says, high expectations, major letdown. Speechless is good at keywords in all caps. And then not starting with a capital letter at the start of the sentence. Well, I really expected this to be a funny movie, given the reviews as well as the stellar cast. But aside from a couple of big, all caps, small laughs and the surprise ending, this movie is an all caps dud. The jokes and the plot both fall flat. Ugh, I wish I hadn't wasted my time on this one. Major disappointment.
And you don't want to get stuck with him.
No.
Major disappointment.
One of the comments said, I kind of think her posting nom de guerre should be changed to brainless.
Oh.
Ouch.
You don't have anything nice to say on the internet.
Amazon.
Can you hear that?
Yeah, it sounds like you're flossing or something.
Andy, are you serious?
Yes.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
You're kidding.
That's uncanny. How did you know that?
Why are you flossing?
I had a particularly troublesome meal.
Andy, it is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You are telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
I love The Next Reel Season 4. Do you know why?
I don't. Why?
Because we got to talk about my favorite movie, Terry Gilliam's Brazil.
That's not even an adaptation.
No, but it was such a great part of our great Terry Gilliam series, and a few others in that series were adaptations, like The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, adapted from Raspi's stories, and La Jetée, which inspired 12 Monkeys.
Oh, right. And for our Man with No Name trilogy, we saw how Sergio Leone's A Fistful of Dollars was basically stolen from Kurosawa's Yojimbo.
We added Labor Day to our Jason Reitman series, adapted from Joyce Maynard's novel.
Oof, there's one we'll always regret.
Our big Stephen King series covered adaptations like The Shining, Cujo, Christine, and Stand By Me, great horror and coming-of-age tales.
Another Coen Brothers adaptation, too. We got to talk about how they turned Homer's The Odyssey into Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou?
For our holiday series, we did The Bishop's Wife and The Poseidon Adventure.
And who could forget seeing Alec Guinness in the adaptation of Kind Hearts and Coronets during our series dedicated to him.
We really need to do more of his films.
Truly.
We had our first film noir series with classics like Double Indemnity, Detour, and Out of the Past.
And our black and white cinematography of James Wong Howe series with The Thin Man, Sweet Smell of Success, Seconds, and King's Row. So many adaptations.
Oh, you're not kidding. Dive deeper into these originals and more at thenextreel.com/originals. Every book you buy helps support our show.
Get the full list at thenextreel.com/originals and start reading today.